been my worst nightmare. But I used EFT. I had 2 sessions only, and it got rid of the lifelong phobia. So that
That's
made it
amazing.
made me realize, yeah, how powerful it is. So I went on and did lots more research, and then my training, and then I started using it with my reflexology clients just for 10 minutes, first of all, in their sessions. I said, can I just try this new technique with you? Made such a massive difference. And then I quickly realized that that's what I was passionate about, supporting the whole emotional piece. And I let the reflexology go. I let other people, there's plenty of people doing fertility reflexology. I let that one go. And I really focused on the EFT, the tapping.
Hi, and welcome everybody to the Endo Fertility Podcast, where you will be empowered to learn how to thrive and conceive with endometriosis. If you want to understand more about your endometriosis, how it can affect your fertility, and how you can personally take action to optimize your health and life, then this is the place for you. I am your host, Lizzie Alexander, founder of the Endo Fertility Specialist. Join me every Wednesday as I dive into topics that will support and guide you, from knowledge about endo and conceiving to nutrition, lifestyle and mindset, pain management to assisted fertility support, functional nutrition and testing, and much more. Together, we will explore a holistic approach to healing that equips you with a toolbox full of diverse strategies to help you manage your endo and enhance your fertility journey. So sit back, relax, and enjoy listening. Welcome to the podcast, Sarah. I'm so excited to have you here today. We've worked together and I have wanted to bring you on here because I just love what you do and I love the emotional freedom technique, EFT.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. You know that I love talking about EFT and all things related to fertility support. So it's wonderful to be here with you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So I think the first thing that I'd really like to get started with is you've had a personal journey, and I always like to kind of cut straight in there, if that's okay with you, because it helps those listening to understand how you've got into what you're doing. And invariably, most people I've interviewed actually who've specialized in what they do, they have their own journey. They have their own experiences, which they've then brought into what they specialize in and what you've become an expert. So would you mind talking around your own fertility challenges and how you came to then develop Fertile Mindset?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think actually I'm a bit unusual in that, yes, I did have my own fertility challenges and my own long path to parenthood, which was 9.5 years in total. In the end, we do have our 2 boys now, but it was a long, twisted, turning path to get there. However, I started specializing in fertility support years before I even thought that I even wanted children. So it was very interesting that came to me first. I was working as a reflexologist. That was my first therapy that I loved working with. And yeah, fertility clients were coming to me every day. So I quickly had to learn a lot about fertility, about IVF, about the different tests and diagnoses, and was very quickly switched on to the whole emotional side and realized that was the key part that wasn't being supported, and that was a big issue for many people. And within a couple of years of working in the world of fertility, I decided that I did want a baby myself and thought, great, I know everything there is to know about fertility now. I'll start charting my cycles. This is going to be so easy for me because I've learned so much. And I charted my cycles and quickly realized that I had quite serious fertility problems in that I wasn't ovulating at all. And my husband was tested and he had a very low count. So we had like a double issue that we were working with straight away. So my journey in that time was about 2.5 years, I think it was, until I did conceive my first baby. And through lots of, like, as we're all familiar with, lots of tests and lots of different opinions and consultants, and trying to find the right support for me, because what I was dealing with was, I guess, wasn't so textbook at the time. It was a low progesterone luteal phase defect kind of fertility issue that not many doctors were switched on to at that time in the early 2000s. We're talking about, so a little while ago. But so I had to kind of really seek out my own support and find the right specialists and the right support, which I did. I brought all the pieces together. I think sometimes you're a bit like a project manager, aren't you, on your fertility journey? You're in the middle of it all, having to learn everything and get all the right specialists. And happily, the next time I had a lot of early losses, and then the next time I conceived, I had the right support in place. And that little baby is now 17, going to be turning an adult this year, which is terrifying that I'm going to be a mother to an adult. But yeah, there we go. That's how fast time goes. And then second time round, we still had our fertility problems. It was still pretty challenging. I would say more challenging for both of us. Both of our kind of imbalances were more imbalanced than they were before our first baby. I put that down to perhaps a few years of sleepless nights because I had a baby that didn't sleep. So I think I was very depleted, and our fertility issues were even more serious. And we did carry on trying. We used all the same support that we had before, but it wasn't working for us this time. And we'd always made the decision that we would adopt as our plan B rather than go down an IVF route. It just felt right to us. So that's what we did. We went on the adoption pathway, which took just as long as the trying to conceive path, just as many, hoops to jump through and lots of waiting and heartache and highs and lows. But happily, we did adopt our second son then when he was just 5 months old. So he was still a little baby when he came to us, but he's now 11. So this is all a very long time ago. But at the same time, I can remember it like it was yesterday. I can remember exactly what it felt like to be on that fertility journey and to be waiting and to have all the uncertainty. And I can really relate to my clients who work with me and what they're experiencing. It really takes me back to it when I hear about what they're going through. With EFT and how I came to practice that, well, that was very early on before I decided I wanted to try myself. But I was recognizing, like I said, the whole emotional piece and how huge that was and how it wasn't really being supported. Even through reflexology, I was relaxing my clients. They would leave literally walking on a cloud as they left my practice room and seemed to be very relaxed, but then they'd come back for the next week's appointment and they'd be just as stressed and overwhelmed and sad and angry as they were before. And I could see the real problems it was causing for them personally and in their wider life. So when I heard about this new technique, relatively new at the time, EFT, emotional freedom technique, sometimes just called tapping, I was intrigued. I was a bit skeptical, but I was intrigued because it sounded like it worked very effectively and could be used without side effects for people on a fertility journey and work quickly. So I tried it for myself, first of all, to see if it would work. I used it on my own fear of public speaking, which was a massive phobia for me. I refused to do any kind of speaking in my work or chair meetings or do anything. I was just absolutely terrified. I wouldn't have even been here speaking to you. This would have been my worst nightmare. But I used EFT, I had 2 sessions only, and it got rid of the lifelong phobia. So that's amazing. It made me realize, how powerful it is. So I went on and did lots more research and then my training, and then I started using it with my reflexology clients just for 10 minutes, first of all, in their sessions. I said, can I just try this new technique with you? Made such a massive difference. And then I quickly realized that that's what I was passionate about, supporting the whole emotional piece. And I let the reflexology go. I let other people, there's plenty of people doing fertility reflexology. I let that one go. And I really focused on the EFT, the tapping.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. I love the kind of like the personal element, but then I totally understand the public speaking. I was the same when I was younger. How I've ended up doing this, I don't know. I mean, I think when I was a student, I used to have a glass of wine or something before just to get that kind of like, it really was. Yeah, I completely understand. So the fact that you then fixed it, it took me 2 decades to get confident with it. The fact you fixed it in 2 sessions just shows how powerful it is. That is amazing.
It blew my mind. It was actually within the first 20 minutes of the first session, I would say it was 90% resolved. And within 20 minutes, I felt like I could go out there and give a talk, and I was looking forward to it. And I had no qualms doing it at all. It was only when I did the talk that then I had a bit more fear. And then I went back and had the second session to clear up some other parts that I hadn't kind of considered. And that was it. I only needed those 2 sessions, which is now 21 years ago, I think, that I had those sessions. And it has stuck all that time, permanent results.
That is incredible. And I mean, there are so many then emotional elements, like you said, in relation to fertility. And that's how I found you. I found you because I was looking for my own emotional support, because I've kind of looked down many avenues, nutritional, functional nutritional testing.
Mm.
And I do feel like I haven't explored that emotional side. And I have found it to be amazing. It was amazing when I was going through IVF this last year, because I'm quite A-type, but also when I get stressed is not the word, because I don't necessarily get stressed, but I'm very sort of on, busy, kind of like driven. And it was just so nice to have that. And it kind of just really calmed me down and my thoughts. And I felt so grounded doing it. And also, you've got the most soothing voice in the world.
Oh.
I honestly, I think it's fantastic. So when it comes to fertility, um, I mean, explain how it works. Like how does it work? Because it's to do with acupuncture, isn't it? The acupuncture pressure points. Maybe you could start there.
Yes, yeah, because I wouldn't blame anyone for thinking that tapping looks very strange. We are literally using our own fingertips, tapping on points on the head, the face, the upper body, and the hands, and tapping these points to bring about emotional balance, which, yeah, I would expect anyone who's never heard of this before to be extremely skeptical, to think it
Yes.
sounds like a load of old nonsense. But then you hear about the results and it gets your curiosity. So my approach to it was, well, I might as well try it and see. It sounds too good to be true. It sounds crazy, but let's just see. Let's see what the results are. And that's where, yeah, I was completely sold. And then I found out more about how it really works. And yes, you're right, it's got its connections to acupuncture in that it uses the same energy system. So that is the Chinese meridian system that runs through the body, which in Chinese medicine has been used for over 5,000 years. This is a fully established way of healthcare, in China. In fact, it's used in all their hospitals. It's used, I've seen videos of where they use acupuncture instead of general anesthesia for heart surgery. It's phenomenal, the power.
Yeah.
It is phenomenal. So it's made its way over to the West. We're very familiar with acupuncture, but I don't think we're using it, to the full capacity here. Obviously, we're still catching up and understanding what this means. So I like to think of the Chinese meridian system a bit like our body's inner electrical wiring system. So we have these channels of energy throughout our body, just like we have wires in our house that channel electricity to every part of the house, but we can't see them, and we definitely can't see the electricity. These are in our body. And the theory behind EFT is that any negative emotion we experience, so anything that isn't good for us, isn't comfortable, isn't needed, is caused by a disruption in our body's energy system. So a bit like a power surge or a short circuit in our body's electrics. And if we can rebalance the flow of energy, then we get back to whatever our most healthy and natural emotional state is, whatever is most supportive for us. So to look at the facts, to be very present, to think in a much more logical and rational way, but also to have a natural sense of optimism and hope, and to have that driving force there without feeling like it's, the highest of the high positivity that feels fake, or the lowest of the low pessimism that just feels like it's bringing us down. We need to find that middle ground that's natural and supportive for us. And the way we do that is by focusing on whatever the issue is. So we do bring it to mind. We don't try and, repeat positive affirmations and reprogram our mind. We actually allow ourselves to connect with the truth of what we're feeling just for a couple of moments. And then we tap on all those meridian points on the face and the body. And we're tapping to send an impulse down each of those lines in turn to rebalance the energetic reaction in that moment. And then when we're rebalanced, we check in and we notice how we're feeling. We always are checking and measuring the change. So you're very much aware of how EFT is working, how much more you still have to do until you get to the result that you want. So it's very much like with acupuncture, you think about lying down and maybe having a bit of a snooze while the needles are inserted and just lying there. There's nothing to do. Whereas EFT, you're very much involved in the session. it's like a talk therapy session up to a point where we explore and we talk about what the issues are and we pinpoint what's important. And then we apply tapping together. We're checking and measuring the results all the time. And it's a self-help technique as well. So you may well learn the technique in a session, but then you can go away and use it by yourself. And typically my clients will use it during their 2-week wait at home, or when they're waiting for results from their doctor, or even when they're in the waiting room. It's something that puts you back in control of your emotional reactions, which I think when so much feels out of control, it's lovely to have that, something you can take ownership of.
No, and I'd agree with that. The fact that you can have it with an expert like yourself, but then it is something you can take away. I mean, it's like you go to acupuncture, but then you can't take it away.
Mm.
There's certain, suddenly an emotional situation will happen where it's like, I can't just, call you up or whatever. And to be able to do that in that moment is amazing. And
very empowering as well.
Very empowering.
When so much feels disempowering on this journey, it's good to have that agency, isn't it, over a very important part of your health, your emotional health.
So what things can you apply it to? So you say you can apply it to the emotional side of things. Can you apply it to any physical symptoms? Because I notice with something I do, like a meditation, and I just came about it whenever I was having bowel pain, and I'd get the very sharp stabbing bowel pain, which is a classical sort of symptom with endometriosis. And then you try and you sit in the toilet, try and pass a movement, but you get stabbing pain, you clench, you go into this kind of like fear thing. And I found then trying to breathe into it and just calming my nervous system and calming myself can then just make the pain go away. So it's a very clear, and I've tried this with clients, it's a very clear going from that fear emotional side, but then feeling the physical effect and then how you can change it so quickly. So can you use it in ways like that in terms of pain or anything? Can you use it like that?
Yeah. EFT, it stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, and it was originally developed, well, fairly recently in the 1990s. It was developed for emotional support to release us of emotions that we don't need. But very quickly, it was noticed in the use of it that people's physical symptoms were reducing. So they'd be working on the anger or the sadness or the frustration or whatever, and a headache would disappear, or a long-standing backache would be improved, or any other conditions. So then the developers, the early kind of developers of EFT started to experiment with using it specifically on physical issues. And there's a lot of research studies out there that can be looked up as well now, where they looked at the kind of, biochemical markers and would see, are physical things changing in the body as we're tapping? So looking at cortisol levels, but also looking at, there was a study done with sticky blood syndrome, I think it's called, I don't know what the official medical term is, but they would take live blood samples and see all the red blood cells clumped together and then tap directly on, I have these sticky blood, my blood cells clump, really acknowledging that and visualizing it, and with all the emotion around it as well, and immediately take another blood sample and see that they had, all separated and the blood was flowing so much better. So there's definitely a lot to be done around that. And I have worked, many times with people with their symptoms. What made me really listen to what you were saying there, that the fear, the tension that's involved, we're aware of this fear, tension, pain cycle that we can get stuck into. And as soon as we feel fear, there is tension in the body, which creates more pain, which creates more fear, more tension, more pain. And that cycle just keeps going round and around. And actually that, as far as I'm aware, the first person to talk about that cycle was in relation to childbirth.
Yes.
Way back about 100 years ago, a guy with a funny name, Grantley Dick Reed, who wrote an amazing book about you got to look his book up, it's amazing. But it's about in the 1930s, I think he wrote this book, when he was trying to bring natural childbirth into the forefront, when birth had become medicalized for the first time, and the kind of richer women in society were being taken into hospital and given pain relief. But he realized that the poorer women who couldn't access that would be very relaxed during childbirth, not expecting pain, so they didn't experience pain. And it was only the ones that were going into hospital expecting it to be painful that then experienced pain and needed the pain relief. So then, did his research and realized that the more we can relax, breathing techniques, and then later hypnosis and all kinds of things that have been used now to prepare women for childbirth, it makes it, yeah, much more comfortable. And of course, the same goes with any pain that we experience, and definitely around the womb. And we're literally going into fight or flight and cramping kind of situations where the organs are drained of blood and nutrition and it's an oxygen, and it's hard to deal with pain in that case. So yeah, I've worked with many symptoms related to the fertility or reproductive issues and endometriosis, but also any other physical symptom that's going on that is all consuming. If someone has headaches or migraine or sciatica or any other pain, even if it's a very understandable pain, a broken bone, like I know there's pain there and I know this can't be instantly fixed, but the emotions, the beliefs, the energy that we're putting into that, because we're so fearful and we're so worried about it. And if we can work with that, it's amazing how less pain we can feel and how much more calm and relaxed we can feel.
Thank you. You explained that amazingly, and it was interesting about the pain triangle. And I remember learning that during hypnobirthing, actually, and that's, I think, where I then I was bringing the sort of pain meditation was after that, because I'd learned about the triangle, and I've forgotten the words now.
Yeah.
Pain,
Fear,
tension,
tension, pain.
fear. Yes, that's it. And yeah, and it was because of that I was like, let's apply it to endometriosis pain, and I was finding actually it was really working. So that's really interesting. It's the same with EFT, that you can do that. So I'm fascinated to know then. And I suppose it's the same whether you've got endometriosis, fertility, you have these feelings of like frustration and hopelessness. Like, can you give an example of like how you set up, how you talk to someone when they're feeling like this? How do you kind of pull those things out? Because I always think it's just magic how you'll ask someone how they're feeling, and then you'll talk around it. And I know there's a whole, you're meant to say sentences, you're meant to say like it in a certain way. How does that work?
So I would say there's a lot of listening involved, first of all, a lot of allowing whoever I'm supporting to speak and give them a space to speak and share. And sometimes it's the first time they've done that because they haven't really got anyone to speak to that will understand and empathize. So I like to create that space, first of all, which I think is healing in itself, isn't it? Just to have a space to be able to be honest about how hard this is and what they're really feeling. And I make copious notes. I'll often fill up a whole A4 sheet while they're speaking, to listen to the language and the words that they may not realize they're saying themselves, but I'll try and capture the essence of what they're telling me. And then when we pinpoint what are the most, the key areas to work on, and we focus on it with tapping, you're right, we say words and phrases to keep our focus. So, we may say, like, if we're waiting for test results from a doctor, and feeling very anxious about it, I'm listening to the language they're using around that, and I will use it in my phrases to kind of repeat back what they're saying. But there is like another part of it too, that I don't fully understand. I think it's the higher wisdom and knowledge and connection that we have between us, that sometimes other phrases and other thoughts will just pop into my head as I'm speaking with them and I'm tapping with them, and I will say other phrases that come in, and afterwards I'll be like, that's exactly how I was feeling. How did you know that? And I don't know how I knew it. I know that there's this connection that builds as we have that space together. And it's the only purpose of the words, though, while we're tapping, is to keep the focus on whatever the issue is. So people do sometimes worry about, how do I formulate those sentences?
Yes.
Be creative and clever and include all the right words, and we don't need to worry too much about that. The essence of it is just to speak your truth and say words that connect you with how you are truly feeling. And the beauty of tapping actually as well is that if you are in a moment with something, if you're in the doctor's waiting room, if you're waiting with a pregnancy test and waiting to turn it over, and you're just feeling all the feels, there's no escaping from it, you're in the moment with the worry, anxiety, whatever it is, you don't necessarily need any words. You can just tap silently while feeling what you're feeling. The words are more useful when we're trying to bring something to mind or heal something from the past or prepare for the future, when we need to kind of put ourselves in a situation. But it's a very flexible technique, and yeah.
I think that's really helpful to know that you don't necessarily have to use the words, because I think that can sometimes put people off. And I know it did to me in the past. I was like, oh, how is this accessible at home? And do I have to do I have to frame it in such a way? Do I have to be articulate? Because sometimes I'm not articulate, or I don't know quite how to express myself about how I'm feeling. Some people don't. You know how you're feeling, but how can you say it in words? And so actually, it's interesting. You say you can just tap, and sometimes it's more articulate in your head and doesn't come out verbally. So that's
And
quite
so,
interesting.
yeah.
Be in your
And
head.
you can just rant and scream and shout. You could do anything. You could, as long as you're feeling connected to the emotion, the feeling, the belief, or whatever it is that you want to be free from, as long as you've got that connection, yeah, it doesn't really matter. I've had other people as well tell me it's very useful to tap with whatever the trigger is in front of them. So say it's a friend that has announced their pregnancy on Facebook, and there's this post and a baby scan picture that's just come up on your timeline, and you're taken aback and you're not sure how to respond, and do you write a comment, do you not, and just feel overwhelmed by it. You could just keep the post in front of you or have it to one side if it's too intense, but then just tap with the feelings that are there in the moment. So there's lots of creative ways to connect with those feelings, and that's the first step, is allowing the feelings. That's a really big part of it.
And that's hard. And I think it's one of the hardest. I just had a very good chat. It was a great chat with Bex from the Worst Girl Gang earlier on Instagram. And we were saying again there that there's a lot of things around kind of nutrition and lifestyle, but there really still isn't very much around the emotional side, the emotional implication. And, I was talking with a client, again, it was a podcast interview about a month ago. And we were talking about kind of like, should you go for surgery? Should you go for IVF? And the recommendation is always to go for IVF over the surgery. And it was interesting. Her point of view was just like, in hindsight, having gone for the IVF and it wasn't working, and then he failed and she had miscarriages. And she was like, what they don't ever take into account is that huge emotional burden. Because often they go, oh, you don't want to have surgery because it's going to take you a while to recover and it's a big thing. Well, actually, IVF is way bigger because you have the emotional aspect. The surgery, the emotional, you have an outcome, and that outcome hopefully is a positive outcome in comparison to the emotional ups and downs and roller coaster. And I just don't think the emotional side of things is considered as much as it should be.
And the experience of each individual fertility patient is unique. And who can say what is right for one person when you're given a choices like that, I think, like going back to when we were saying, you have to be your own project manager. You are the one who's in control of this. And once you've got good information from trusted experts and your doctors, and you understand the options, then it comes down to you to make the decision. And tapping is used really effectively actually for decision making. And I frequently use that in sessions, because there are many decisions to make, aren't there, on this journey about treatment options and all kinds of different things. So what it helps with in that case is kind of clearing away all the excess noise and mental and emotional clutter that's making this decision difficult. Everyone's opinions and all the differing potential outcomes and all the statistics and everything else. And it strips it back to, right, what's important to me? What do I know to be true? Really like the essence of it, so that you can make a decision that you then feel truly comfortable with, and then you can be on board with, and you're not going to be second guessing, and you're not going to go into it with regrets either. I think that's what a lot of people say to me is, I just want to know that whatever the outcome is, whether I have my baby in the end or not, I don't want to have any regrets. And like that kind of situation you said there, it's that, oh, should I have had surgery then? Should I have gone with my gut and done that anyway? We decided, as I said at the start, that we didn't want IVF. We went straight from trying naturally with acupuncture and hormonal supplementation and things like that, straight over to adoption. And when our adoption social worker came to visit us, she was really taken aback. She's like, I've never met anybody with fertility problems who hasn't had tons of IVF first before choosing to adopt. Why did you do that? And she'd also been a fertility counsellor, so she had lots of experience, but she'd never come across any people like us, that had made this unusual decision. And we shared, with so many reasons. So these were all our reasons why we didn't want IVF. And she said, wow, that's really refreshing to hear that you decided for yourself what was right for you. And that's to be, commended. And that's what I always want for my clients, is taking ownership of their decisions, knowing they feel comfortable with them.
And that is really fascinating. I didn't realize you could help use that. And I think there's something that I've got really into recently is kind of honing in much more on my intuition.
Mm.
And I've actually completely gone down a bit of an avenue on human design and kind of like realized that my intuition is like my biggest gift and I've been ignoring it. Like
Yeah.
I knew it was important, but it's interesting there that you're kind of talking about the fact that, I mean, everyone's got intuition. Some of us have it, you know, are able to listen to it more powerful than the other. But when it comes to decisions, and I know that I've definitely had this, particularly over this last year, you kind of just feel overwhelmed. And like you said, you have all these other things there and you feel overwhelmed, but you need to make a decision, because if you don't make a decision, you can't move to the next step and you're stuck in this kind of
Mm.
no man's land.
Mm.
But you need to know that you've kind of looked through all of the doors before you can
Yeah.
move through to a next door. And so to say, actually, there's something that can help you with this, that's very exciting. That's kind of
Hmm.
like, that's empowering. It's exciting because it's so overwhelming sometimes to go, do we go for another round of IVF? Do you go for adoption? Do you, you know, go, right, enough is enough? Do you go back to something else? Do you, you know, and it's just this constant, it's a constant, like you said, it's a project management situation
Mm.
with decision after decision, and you get decision overwhelm. So I'm really excited for, you know, everybody, the fact that you can use it. I didn't know you could do that. So that's, yeah.
Yeah. Well, if we think, like you say, overwhelm is a big part and
Yeah.
fear. And if we're making decisions from a place of fear, is
Mm.
that going to be the right thing for us? Are we doing it out of
No.
desperation or panic? Or, it's a really uncomfortable place to be. So yeah, if we can acknowledge what the fears are and clear the overwhelm and all the excess noise, it does become so much easier. And I've had clients go down this pathway who wouldn't even, for example, consider donor eggs. They were told
Yes.
that was their only hope for conceiving at a certain stage, but they just could not even go there. So we explored it. I was like, well, have you thought about it? Have you researched it? Do you understand what it means? So we'd get the information together and then tap on all the fears, all the worries, all the beliefs around it, so they could figure out whether that's what they truly felt about donor treatment, or whether there was a door that could be opened there. It's very interesting, yeah, to go really get in touch with what's important to you.
So are you able to do an example tapping sequence on something now? Is that like a
Hmm.
short one? Is that something that would be, I mean, that's something it would, I think the listeners maybe just, if you can do that, is that something you could do?
Yeah, I think, especially as we're talking about overwhelm, I think that's often a really good place to start, because most of us on this journey feel overwhelmed at some point, and we can easily get ourselves into a place of overwhelm if we think about everything that's going on, everything that's yeah, on our to-do list, on the different things that we could do to support our fertility, all the different routes we could go down, what it all means, we can easily feel overwhelmed. So I'm happy to do a little taster kind of round of tapping there. On video, people would be able to see the points that I'm tapping on. If they can't see the points because we're on audio, I will name the points as we go to
Yeah.
each one so they can listen and find the points. But it's really helpful to be able to look at a chart first of all and see where each of the points are.
And I will share that
So
on the blog.
we're going to be giving some free resources so they could have a chart in front of them. So as you're hearing me name the points, you just follow those points with your own fingertips and tap on them. And the tapping that we're using is just a light to medium pressure. It doesn't have to be too hard. Usually using your middle finger and your index finger on each of the points. We do the top of the head, which we use all the fingertips round in a circle, and we do the collarbone, which is the whole hand flattened out. But say if they look at my resources, they can have a quick kind of, I think it's an 8-minute video on there that just teaches it from start to finish. So you'll watch that video
Mm.
and you'll feel really confident using it. What I would say with tapping, it's a very safe technique, but if anyone today is worried at all about their emotional health, their mental health, if they feel unstable and they don't feel comfortable using a new technique without consulting their doctors, I'd recommend that they do that first, and yeah, take care of themselves while they tap on this with us.
So
Um,
before you get started, just to touch on
mm,
that, because that is a really good point. Do people ever feel like, I can't think what the word is, vulnerable, that they're vulnerable to suddenly open a door
Yeah,
that they've, because this is certainly what I'm like, open a door that they don't want to then open, because if they open it, everything's going to come out.
absolutely. Yes. And I think we all have those doors that are firmly closed in our lives. So we have things that we've experienced in the recent or distant past, and we've just put a lid on the box, and we don't want to go there. The fertility journey and reproductive health as a whole, I think, is really good at reminding us of stuff. And we can deal with a current issue that's related to our fertility that then has parallels to something in the past, even if it's one that will come up often is like a sense of failure. And it's like, I feel like I'm failing now. And that reminds them of some childhood memory of failure. So it's interesting to see the parallels that are there. So in a fully supported one-to-one session, I'm happy to work with almost anything, and I will guide people through in a very safe, supported way to do that. And there are ways, that we can approach things gently as well. At this kind of distant, self-guided, I just want people to only feel, only use it if they feel comfortable using it, and only to go to issues that they feel comfortable using it on their own as well. And of course, if they've got any questions about it, they can reach out to me and ask. I'm very happy to give advice of the best way to approach things safely and comfortably.
Amazing. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll let you get started. I won't
We'll
interrupt.
do a little tapping round. Are you going to tap along with us as well?
I am, yeah.
Wonderful. So what I'll be doing, just to set everyone's expectations, is we're going to be tapping on each of the points and saying words and phrases as we tap, which I will leave space so you can repeat those after me. If they're not exactly how you're feeling, you can repeat them in your own way. And if you're in a public place listening, or on a train, or whatever you're doing, you can just listen and repeat them in your mind. You don't have to say them out loud, but just do the tapping at the same time. We do a setup phrase, which will be our first phrase that we say 3 times. And that always has a similar format. It's always, even though I have this issue, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And we'll say more words to describe the issue. But just to, so you expect that coming. It can feel quite an emotional thing to say, but it's a really important part of the tapping, because it helps us overcome any self-sabotaging that we're doing and help us be ready to overcome the issue. It helps us acknowledge where we are, we accept ourselves anyway, and we're ready to start overcoming this. So, and then we'll be tapping all the other points, keeping our focus on the issue. So if we do that with overwhelm, if you think at the moment, before we begin, like what's going on in your life, on your fertility journey, measure where you think your level of overwhelm is on a 0 to 10 scale. 0 is I'm totally fine and I'm not at all overwhelmed. And if that's you, I'd love to speak to you, because I want to know what your secret is, because I think we all suffer from it. But 0 is where you'd like to be. 10 out of 10 is the most overwhelmed that you could imagine. And just grade yourself there. Also notice if you're feeling any particular emotion around it, whether it's making you feel a sense of panic or sadness or frustration or whatever it might be. And notice if that feeling is showing up in your body as well, anywhere, if you've got any tension anywhere or pain in your body as you think about how busy, how overwhelming life is at the moment. Just take a moment to tune into that. You can always pause if you need another moment. And then when you have that number on 0 to 10 and you've noticed how that's feeling to you, we'll start tapping. And the point we're tapping on is on the side of the hand. We'll keep tapping that point continuously, and we'll say this phrase now. Even though I'm feeling overwhelmed, there is so much going on and so much to think about. I accept how I feel, and I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though I feel overwhelmed, there's a lot on my to-do list, a lot related to my fertility. I acknowledge this feeling, and I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Okay, we'll do one more setup. Even though I have this level of overwhelm, as I think about everything going on, I sense it in my body. I feel the emotion. And I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Okay, so now we're going to tap through all the other points. I'll name them on the first tap round while just keeping focus on that sense of overwhelm. So tapping on the crown of the head, this feeling of overwhelm. And then on the inside of the eyebrow, there is so much going on right now. Side of the eye, of course I'm feeling overwhelmed. Under the eye, so many things to think about. Under the nose, when I think of my fertility and my health. On the chin, feeling truly overwhelmed. And to the collarbone, I'm not sure where to begin. Under the arm, when I think of all the things I could do. Back to the top of the head, and we'll carry on going around. All the things that I should be doing. Of course, I feel overwhelmed. But I wonder what is necessary. If anything can be released. What do I need right now? This sense of overwhelm. Too many things to think about. Feeling the emotion of overwhelm. How it shows up in my body. I'm ready to release anything that I don't need right now. Anything that isn't supporting me. This sense of overwhelm. All the things on my list. I wonder what I need right now. I'm open to all possibilities as I address this overwhelm. So we'll stop tapping there. And we just take a moment to take a nice deep breath right down to your belly. And release the breath with a sigh. And if you have it nearby, have a sip of water. It's good to keep hydrated as you tap. It's an energy technique. Works best when we're well hydrated. So now that's a complete round of tapping. What we do after we've tapped is we check in, because it's good to not just tap and run, but to take a moment to pause and check in and see where you are now. So whatever was you brought to mind before that was giving that sense of overwhelm, bring it to mind in exactly the same way again. Check to see what your response is to it now. Grade how overwhelming that feels on the 0 to 10. If any emotion is still there, whether that's changed at all, how you're feeling in your body as well. And the golden rule is, if you're still above a 0, it's worth doing another round. And luckily you're listening to this recording, so you can rewind. You could do another and another. But yeah, to aim to get as close to 0 as possible, because that's where our perspective can really change and we can notice that we're looking at things very differently.
Thank you, Sarah. That was
You're very welcome.
beautiful. And I always feel I don't always go down to a 0, but I always feel very relaxed too with it. It just calms the nervous system, the mind, it calms everything. It's just far more effective. Funnily enough, something that I've tried a few times is a sound bath, and people find that very relaxing. I don't at all. Whereas EFT, I find very calming as well, not just on the emotional level, but on a physical level.
And you're right about the nervous system regulation. That's what we're doing, absolutely. We're tending to the nervous system and bringing our reactions back into balance. So we're not in that fight and flight and peaking our cortisol levels, and then almost anything, I would say, becomes manageable in life. Even the biggest challenges, even the things that are the big, trauma events in life, we have so much more resilience within us and creativity and peace and calm that we can bring to situations than we realize. But we do need to quite literally tap into it. It's not just always going to come forward naturally, not if we've kind of become programmed to react in a stress response, which most of us are, because life is busy, life is stressful. There are triggers everywhere, all over online, in social media. We're just being triggered all the time. So we get used to being in that stress response 24/7. But it isn't our natural response, not unless it's really needed. So it's, wonderful to tend to that nervous system and get back to how we naturally want to respond to something.
And have you found that when people are doing the EFT, that the clearing the emotions, and that's too simplistic a way of saying it, because often we carry, it's interesting, Louise Hay states that with endometriosis, it's interesting, it's blame is one of the ones that's there, anger. It's quite interesting whether you believe in this storage of emotions within our body and whether EFT helps release that. So number one is, do you believe in the storage of our emotions in our body, that kind of like mind-body connection? I suppose we covered it a little bit earlier, and whether EFT is helping as part of that. And maybe I'm going down an avenue that...
I could talk about this all day. Yeah. Perfect avenue.
To go away.
I have Louise Hay's book behind me on the shelf, and is it Your Mind Can Heal Your Body? I can't remember the one, but it's the one where she lists every kind of possible condition and what the emotional. Yes. So, and sometimes I will bring that out. I'll be like, hold on a second. I go and get my book, and we look at the symptom that they're suffering with, and we look to see what the insights are around it. And often it makes perfect sense. It's like, I forget now, I'm sure it's shoulder pain and neck pain is like carrying heavy burdens. It just makes sense, doesn't it? A lot of it, so I will definitely work with that, and it's fascinating. And the cause, if we think of it, the cause of all physical issues is usually unknown. Like, why do we have endometriosis? Why do we have polycystic ovaries? Why do we have whatever? Why? Nobody can really answer it. They might say, well, it might be toxins, it might be genes, it might be this, that, but why? Even if it's genes, why did it switch on for you and not for somebody else, not for your sister or something? It's like, it's not, there's a lot that isn't explained just by looking at the physical body. So what's going on around that? Well, our thoughts and our feelings and our beliefs and all the messages and all the chemicals that we're going through our body from those thoughts, are bound to have an impact, and our body is responding. Our body is responding to whatever we give it. So if we're giving it a lot of anger, we're giving it a lot of fear, there's going to be a response. I do find that fascinating. And people will often come to me, they've done that kind of work themselves. They've read the Louise Hay or whatever else, or they've just got that gut instinct, that intuition of like, this is why I believe that I've got whatever issue. I've got endometriosis, or I'm unable to conceive. I believe it's related to this emotional thing that happened in my life, and I feel I need to heal that, and it will unlock it. So I always follow, whatever someone's telling me, I'm going to believe them. I'm there to believe them and listen to them. And then we can explore that together and see where it takes us, So it's fascinating.
Oh, good. I'm glad that you're because I really do feel, and the more whenever I see clients, I will always ask them the questions about whether there are any events that have happened, when did they suddenly feel that they didn't feel well? And it's like, do you remember there's being an incident? And it's funny the amount of times that there is some emotional incident. There's either a trauma or, and that trauma ranges, but it's amazing. There is something emotional that often happens around those periods or before it, or something that they have then not dealt with either. So it's interesting to talk to them. They might have come across something, but if they've dealt with it, that's okay. But it's often when they've, put it in a box and pushed it down and not dealt with it. And I think this comes from this, I don't know, maybe, and it'd be interesting to know different cultures around the world, whether they suffer in different ways, because some cultures are very good at verbalizing and singing and have ways of getting these things out, whereas other cultures are very much no. I mean, like British is a good one of just, being stoic and keeping it down, and whether that has a greater effect on that. So, I mean, that's a whole nother, you can get geeky and excited about that. But I think it's so important on this fertility journey that we don't ignore our emotions, it's scary. For me, it's been the part that I have put down in a box, although I found talking about my journey is part of my healing process, and definitely that has helped that. But for those listening, don't underestimate the importance of addressing that, and don't feel like you're alone, and you aren't, and it's such an isolating journey, and that's why it's so important to find a community, find people that understand what you're going through. And then Sarah, what she does is amazing. Contact Sarah. And I suppose that would lead me on, kind of, what message of hope would you like to share with the listeners who might feel a bit discouraged by their fertility journey? Like, what could you relate it to EFT?
Gosh, yes. You've said so many beautiful things just there that I think are so true. It can feel like a very lonely journey. You can feel very alone with what you're experiencing and all the challenges you're facing and the research you're doing. And then it can quickly become overwhelming with all the research and all the different opinions and where to go next. And I think whatever modality you choose, please do choose something that is just for you among all of this, all of the medical stuff, the nutrition stuff, the whatever else you're doing to physically support your journey. Please choose something and set aside some time and energy and budget and whatever else that you need to make it happen, that is just for you and your lived experience of this time. That could be EFT if this is resonating, but it could be something else, but something that you can commit to. It will make the greatest difference. It's not a luxury, it's a necessity. One thing that I read in some research recently was when they looked at the reasons why couples didn't continue with IVF when their prognosis was good, they expected them to have a positive outcome, they had the money available, their doctors were advising and saying, continue going with IVF. The biggest reason why people stopped IVF was from the emotional strain of it. They just could not continue with it. And then who knows what could have happened. We've all seen that image online, haven't we, of the diamond miners. It's like, keep going, and someone just stops where the biggest diamond is, and they just turn around and go home. So we never know what's around the corner. And I think the more support that you can give yourself and strengthen yourself in a natural way, that isn't toxic positivity and powering through, something that's sustainable and nurturing to you, will give you the resources you need to continue on this journey for as long as you want and need to, and be in control of that decision as well. So yeah, I hope that this talk has inspired people to take care of themselves. I think we all need a bit of that, don't we?
Yes, definitely. And particularly at this time of year, I think it's we're recording this now, it's not going out till January, but we're recording just before Christmas. And I think it is also a very poignant time. It's a time that can be very challenging emotionally. And then again, the beginning of the year, it's kind of like you've come to the end of the year. Have you been successful? Are you waiting for a cycle? And then you're going into the next year and you haven't got to where you want to be. So yes, it can be very, and depending on what's gone on in the year, whether you've, depends what's gone on. So yes, that's really helpful to say that.
Turning of the year, it can be that real opportunity as well, isn't it? Of here we go, here's a fresh chapter. Yeah. Let's see what we could do differently this year. What do I need? And do a review of the last
And I think that's really important. You're right. And I think it's, and I've said that in my episode that came out last week, just before Christmas, because this will come out afterwards, was exactly that. It's really important to do that review of the year and kind of what have you learned, because it is all a journey. It's a journey where we learn things about ourselves physically, emotionally, and then what can you take into the next year? So yeah, I think that's really important. And it's a new start, and that's why the new year is most people find it, it's a new start, it's a fresh start that you can go forward with.
Yes.
So how can people connect with you and learn more about the fertile mindset approach? What are you kind of working on at the moment?
Yeah, well, people can find me at Fertile Mindset, both on my website, fertilemindset.com, also online social media. Facebook, I'm under Fertile Mindset. Instagram is fertile_mindset, but you can still find me there. I have a free resource pack that I would love to give your listeners that I think would be a really great place for them to start if they're kind of intrigued by this technique that they've just had a little taster of and want to see what else they can do with it and how it can apply to them. It's called my Fertility EFT Starter Kit, and that is on my website at fertilemindset.com/starter kit. And that contains everything they need to learn the technique from scratch, and some tapping scripts about some of the most common fertility challenges that we face, and some tapping charts as well, where they can look at those points and be reminded how to tap. I also send out daily emails of support and inspiration too, and I have a free tapping circle once a month that they are very, very welcome to come to. I've just set the date for January, actually, which I think will be after this is going out.
Okay.
Will be the 15th of January is my
Yes,
next
it will.
free tapping circle. Great.
Yes.
And there will be another one in February and so on if they're listening to this later. So they're very welcome to come along, join in with the support. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me and ask any questions that you have as well. I'm always there to support.
Thank you, Sarah. That's amazing. And your daily seeds, I do love them. They're very short and sharp. And I'm like, I should do that because I waffle in my emails. They're lovely and short and sharp and really supportive. So yes, definitely get onto Sarah's mailing list and everything fertile mindset. It's fantastic. Is there anything else that you wanted to share that you're working on at all at this moment? Otherwise,
you know what? I think that's about it, because I've gone through my own kind of clarity moment, which is something I truly believe in. It's one of the values I work with at Fertile Mindset is clarity, which comes when we free ourselves of overwhelm. And my main focus now is my one-to-one support. I've let go of a lot of the kind of side projects I had going on, and I just love to work with people one-to-one. So that's my main focus. However, I do have my podcast that is now archived, but fully available with 94 episodes, I think. So if anyone wants to check out the Fertile Mindset podcast, you'll find lots of fertility support inspiration there too. Yeah, I look forward to connecting with your listeners.
amazing. And I'll list that all on the show notes so you can see that. And it'll also be on the webpage as well. So finally, if women listening to this episode today could take away one thing, what would that be?
I think it's a word that you said first, of intuition, and I want to add trust into that. You've listened to this today for some reason. You saw the title, you saw what we'd be talking about, and you press play and you've got as far as this to the end. So for some reason you're here, you're investigating this, and you're reaching out for the right kind of support. Anything you can do now to keep connecting to that intuition that's guiding your way on this journey, rather than doing all of the things, see if you can, tap into your intuition and be guided to your best path through the challenges you're facing. And that's what I'd love people to do.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Thank you for coming on. It's been fantastic to have you here today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I know that everybody listening will have definitely got something out of this episode. You'll know where to find her if you want to work with Sarah. And thank you ever so much again.
Thank you, Lizzie. Thank you.